A trauma bond doesn't feel like love that's simply hard. It feels like love that you can't stop touching even when it burns you. It feels like your body stays loyal to someone your mind no longer trusts. It feels like you know what happened, you know what it cost you, you know you deserve better, and still, something inside you keeps reaching. Not because you're weak, because your nervous system learned them as a survival pattern. And loosening a trauma bond without breaking yourself starts with one gentle truth that changes everything. You are not trying to get over a person. You are trying to unhook your body from a cycle it started to confuse with safety. Trauma bonds form when connection and pain get braided together. When relief follows harm. When warmth follows withdrawal. When closeness comes only after you've been anxious enough, apologetic enough, patient enough, small enough. Your system learns that love is something you earn by enduring. So even when the relationship is hurting you, leaving it can feel like losing the only method you know for getting relief. Because the same person who destabilized you also became the person who soothed you. And that is the trap. It's not that they were your soulmate. It's that they became your regulator. Your nervous system started using them like a switch. Anxious without them, calm when they return. And once that pattern sets in, logic alone can't break it. That's why you can understand everything and still feel pulled. This is not an intelligence problem. It's a conditioning problem. So when you loosen it, you do it with respect for how deep the conditioning goes. You don't rip yourself away and call it strength. You don't shame yourself and call it discipline. You loosen it the way you would loosen something tangled around your ribs, carefully, patiently, with the goal of keeping your breath intact. The first way you break yourself in trauma bond healing is by demanding that your feelings disappear on your schedule. The bond didn't form overnight. It formed through repetition, through cycles, through intermittent reinforcement. Sometimes they were warm, sometimes they were cold, and your system became obsessed with earning the warm again. Intermittent reinforcement is the strongest addictive pattern there is. That's why the smallest contact can feel like a drug. One message can reset your cravings. One soft moment can make you forget the last 10 painful ones. It isn't because you're naive. It's because the reward is unpredictable. And unpredictable rewards wire the brain harder than predictable ones. So you loosen the bond by removing the unpredictability from your life. Not by trying to stop caring, but by stopping the cycle that keeps restarting the craving. That means you stop feeding the bond with micro-access, the just checking messages, the friendly replies that still carry longing, the late-night scroll to see if they viewed, the little doses of them that keep your body from fully detoxing. A trauma bond doesn't die from one big decision. It dies from not being fed. But here is the part that matters. You can stop feeding it without becoming harsh. You can stop feeding it without turning into someone you don't recognize. The goal isn't to become cold. The goal is to become clean. Clean means no mixed messages to your own nervous system. Clean means you stop giving yourself tiny hits of the very thing that keeps you addicted. Because what breaks you is the yo-yo, the on and off, the relapses that make you feel like you're back at day one. And I want you to hear this clearly. If you relapse, it doesn't mean you failed. It means you touched the trigger. That's all. Trauma bonds aren't broken by perfection. They're broken by returning to clarity faster. Now, let's talk about the most misunderstood part of trauma bonds. You're not only attached to them, you're attached to the version of yourself you became around them. The version of you that kept hoping, the version of you that kept trying, the version of you that believed the next conversation would finally fix it, the version of you that could tolerate pain and still love. That version might feel like love itself. So when you leave, it can feel like you're abandoning your own heart. That's why people go back. Not because the person is good, because the identity is familiar. And to loosen the bond, you have to grieve the identity as much as you grieve the person. You have to let the fixer self, the waiter self, the "if I just love harder" self slowly step down from the job, because that job was never meant to be yours. Another reason trauma bonds feel impossible to loosen is that the bond often carries unfinished emotional business. The things you never got to say, the apologies you never received, the accountability that never came, the clarity that never happened. Your mind keeps the file open because it wants justice. It wants meaning. It wants to know that what you experienced was real. But the person who created the confusion cannot be the one who resolves it. If they could resolve it, you wouldn't be bonded like this. So loosening the bond means you stop asking them to validate what they refused to honor. You stop waiting for their admission to free you. You let reality be the closure. Reality is the pattern, the instability, the hot and cold, the lack of repair, the way your body never felt fully safe. That's enough. You don't need a confession. You need a life that doesn't require you to beg for basic stability. The bond also survives on one specific fantasy, that if they finally choose you, everything will feel okay. But notice how the fantasy is always in the future. It's always when. When they realize, when they heal, when they apologize, when they commit, when they love you properly. Trauma bonds are built on delayed safety, the promise of safety later if you endure now. And that is exactly why they break you. Because your body lives in now. Your body cannot thrive on later. Your body can only breathe when safety exists in the present. So loosening the bond is shifting from maybe one day to what is true today. What is true today is what matters. What is true today is whether you feel respected, emotionally safe, and steady. If today is chaos, then today is the answer. Now, here is the part that makes this feel viral, because it's the sentence people don't want to admit, but they recognize instantly. You can be trauma bonded to someone who never loved you well, and the bond will still feel like the deepest thing you've ever felt. That's because depth of feeling is not proof of health. Depth of feeling can be the result of survival stress. The bond can be intense because you were constantly trying to stabilize something unstable. Your system was constantly working. You were constantly in longing, in fear, in relief, in hope, in despair. That emotional roller coaster creates intensity. But intensity is not intimacy. Intimacy is calm, consistent, safe. And when you finally touch a calm love, it might feel unfamiliar at first, but unfamiliar is not wrong. Unfamiliar is healing. So how do you loosen this without breaking yourself? You stop making your healing a battle with your feelings. You treat your feelings like weather. They can come, they can go, they can surge, they can crash, but you don't let them drive the car. You don't obey every craving like it's a command. You let the wave pass without turning it into action. Because the trauma bond wants one thing: action. It wants you to reach out. It wants you to check. It wants you to re-enter the cycle to get relief. But relief from them is borrowed peace. It always comes with a cost. The cost is your dignity. The cost is your stability. The cost is another reset of the addiction. So you start choosing a different kind of relief. Not fast relief, real relief. The kind that builds. The kind that doesn't disappear. The kind that doesn't require you to compromise yourself. And here's the secret. The bond loosens when your life becomes more emotionally nourishing than the cycle. When you start having enough safety, enough steadiness, enough self-respect in your day-to-day, that the chaos starts to look less like love and more like harm. That shift doesn't happen by forcing yourself to stop loving them. It happens when you stop starving yourself. Because trauma bonds often thrive in emotional hunger. You're hungry for reassurance, hungry for clarity, hungry for warmth, hungry for being chosen. And they become the only source you're trying to get that from, even though they keep withholding it. So your work is to stop making them your only source of soothing. Because the moment they stop being your only source, they stop being your drug. And when they stop being your drug, you can finally see them clearly. You can finally remember the whole story, not just the highs. You can finally feel the cost without romanticizing it. Another thing, trauma bonds create a strange loyalty to pain. You start believing that leaving means you gave up, that staying is proof of your depth, that enduring is proof you loved. But enduring is not the definition of love. Enduring is what people do when they're stuck. Love is not meant to require endurance as a personality trait. Love is meant to be something you can rest in. So when you feel guilt for loosening the bond, remember what that guilt is. It's the old conditioning trying to keep you in place. It's the part of you that equates leaving with betrayal. But you are not betraying love by leaving harm. You are protecting love by returning it to yourself. Now, there is one more layer that keeps trauma bonds tight. The need to be the exception. The need to be the one who finally reaches them. The need to be the one they change for. This need is powerful because it turns your pain into a mission. It gives meaning to what you endured. If you can be the exception, then the suffering becomes worth it. But that is the most dangerous bargain of all, because it makes you tolerate what you would never tolerate if you weren't trying to win. It makes you accept humiliation as part of the process. And you deserve better than a love you have to win through suffering. You deserve a love that meets you where you are, not a love that requires you to bleed for proof. So loosening the bond is also loosening the need to be the exception. It's accepting that you don't need to prove your worth by being chosen by someone who doesn't know how to choose. You don't need to prove you're lovable by staying when it hurts. You prove your worth by protecting yourself. You prove your worth by leaving the cycle. You prove your worth by choosing stability over intensity. And that is the quiet bravery. Now, I want you to imagine the bond as a tight knot. If you pull violently, you break the thread. If you loosen slowly, the thread stays intact and the knot releases. Your heart is the thread. We want your heart intact. We don't want you hardened. We don't want you numb. We don't want you cynical. We want you free. So you loosen it by doing one thing consistently. You stop giving your most precious energy to what hurts you. You stop feeding the cycle. You stop rewarding inconsistency. You stop giving full access to someone offering partial presence. You stop treating contact as medicine. You stop turning their attention into oxygen. And when you do that, the cravings will rise at first. That's normal. That's the bond protesting. But then something else begins. You start sleeping more deeply. You start thinking more clearly. You start feeling your own life again. You start remembering who you were before the cycle. You start feeling pride, not because you won, but because you stayed loyal to your dignity. And that pride is stabilizing. It becomes a new anchor. It becomes the thing you don't want to lose. And once you have that, the bond loosens faster. Because now the cost of going back is obvious. You'd have to give up your peace. You'd have to give up your clarity. You'd have to give up your self-respect. And you won't. Not because you don't love them, because you finally love yourself more. So if you're in the middle of loosening a trauma bond and it feels like it's tearing you, remember this. You are not breaking. You are detoxing. You are not failing. You are withdrawing from a pattern that trained your body to confuse pain with love. You are not losing the love of your life. You are losing a cycle that kept you in survival. And survival can feel like love because it's intense. But you were not meant to survive love. You were meant to be held by it. You were meant to be chosen by it. You were meant to be safe in it. And the moment you stop feeding the cycle is the moment you start walking toward the kind of love that doesn't require you to break. It requires you to breathe. And you can breathe again. Welcome to Attachment Alchemy Lab. You're safe here.